For most of our lives, Sudanese people have been living in an environment without a viable future, where dreams were outlawed, a space devoid of hope. For 30 years, Sudan was ruled by the military dictator Omar al-Bashir, and we experienced brutal oppression under him that made life unbearable, especially for young people, and even more so for women. We were suffocating, living in a state of apathy just to survive. Many of us did whatever they could to leave the country. Escape seemed to be our only hope. That is, until the 18th of December 2018, when high school kids came out of their schools in cities like Damazin and Atbara and took to the street in protest against al-Bashir, calling for the right to freedom. Our slogan was, "Paskud bas, it should just fall," because we had no interest in negotiating for our right to live. From that day till the 10th of January, more than 40 people were killed. And by the 5th of February, the number had risen to 52. Hundreds were injured and thousands were arrested. The news of those kids risking their lives in protest for collective freedom was the spark. A fire was growing inside of us. The long-lost feeling of hope slowly returning, warming our hearts. Marches kept happening, protests getting bigger by the day. For the first time in our generation, we started to feel like Sudan belongs to us. We were a people, unarmed, marching through the streets, facing arrest, torture, and bullets. We were also fighting our own internal doubts that with all this risk and all this sacrifice, our movement would not succeed. These doubts were erased on April 6, 2019. On the 34th anniversary of another popular uprising against another military dictator, thousands headed to the military headquarters in the center of the capital to claim back their country. We set up camp, announcing a full sit-in. The fear was gone and hope led the way. Over the days of the sit-in, people from around Sudan were meeting each other, some for the first time. We went from being a devastated and divided community to a connected and united one. Unfortunately, hope did not survive for long. On Monday, the 3rd of June, the military council committed a massacre over the sit-in that lasted more than 4 hours. Using heavy weapons, they killed more than 100 people and injured hundreds more. They raped more than 70 women and men and threw more than 40 bodies to the Nile to cover what they did. That same morning, they cut off the internet from all of Sudan in a further attempt to cover their crimes. Our diaspora sprang into action, creating the viral Blue for Sudan campaign. And yet, for another first time, the world noticed us. In this moment, when the world saw Sudan, Sudan was not able to see the world. We were shocked, traumatized, frightened, terrorized. But we transformed all those negative feelings to the one and only feeling that's been driving us: hope. Hope led people to go out again with more courage and will to defend ourselves and our rights. On the 30th of June, thousands fearlessly took to the streets on that day and all the coming days. On the 17th of August, we came to an agreement with the military, a compromise to see all the dreams we built during the sit-in come true. The agreement was to have 2 shifts in ruling the country, one for the military and the other for the civilians. And then we have our elections and we live happily ever after. The next 2 years were so hard on the people. And as the time to transfer power to the civilians approached, military were so worried, because for the first time in 50 years, they wouldn't be ruling Sudan. On the 25th of October 2021, 2 weeks before the transfer date, the military leaders Al-Burhan and Hemedti orchestrated a coup, betraying the Sudanese people and killing their dreams. And once again, they cut off the internet and all calls. It was a big shock, but this time people's reaction was faster. They went out in protest against the military rule that same day. To build our hopes again, this resistance was inevitable. We were sick of life, sick of oppression, and we had tasted freedom and the meaning of life, so we had no choice but to go against that coup. The revolution taught us how to fight and the power of our own voice. We reached back to our history of resistance and revolution, not only the past 2 years, but since Sudan's independence. And here we are, trying to write history again and get our rights and freedom back from our oppressors. So, what is all this for? Simply for the right to live. Sudan is almost 70% young. Young people around the world are now making their voices heard and their presence felt in their communities. We want that too. We don't just want the basics of freedom and human rights. We deserve to live full lives, to create our own opportunities. Hell, we want to be part of the TikTok trends. We've been living in a black hole, completely cut off from the rest of the world for 3 decades, and it has affected every facet of our lives. We are just like you, deserving to present parts of the world that young people will inherit, to be seen and heard, just like you. Help us do that. Show us support and solidarity by making the world watch us fighting for our freedom, and use the hashtag #EyesOnSudan to support our revolution.